Hi, grammar class. On page 246 of your book, you have a very good review of what is called complements. Number one talks about action verbs and how that action verbs can have three different complements. It can have a direct object, an indirect object, or an objective complement. And your book tells exactly what those are. A direct object is a noun, sometimes a pronoun, that follows an action verb and receives the action from the verb. It always answers the question whom or what after the verb. So, in order to have a direct object, you have to have an action verb, number one. A good example: I throw the ball. I am the subject, throw is the verb, the ball is what receives the action, and so that is a direct object. An indirect object, it's a noun, sometimes a pronoun, that precedes the direct object and tells to whom, or for whom, or to what, or for what the action of the verb is done. For instance, if I say, I throw James the ball. I is the subject, throw is the verb. Well, what did I throw? I threw the ball. The ball receives the action, but to whom was the action done? Well, it was done to James. The indirect object will always come between the action verb and the object, or the direct object. So, I threw what? You can answer what or whom. You've got a direct object, the ball. And who receives the ball? James. You can't have a direct object without an action verb. You can't have an indirect object without an action verb and a direct object. Also, objective complements. That's a noun or an adjective that renames or describes the direct object. The objective complement usually follows the direct object. You can test for an objective complement by seeing if the words to be fit the direct object and objective complement. Also remember that objective complements usually follow words such as make, consider, name, choose, elect, appoint, render, leave, think, and find. Let me give you an example. We elected Donald Trump as president. We is the subject, elected is the verb, and so it's an action verb. Elected who or what? Well, we elected Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the direct object. Is there anything in that sentence that describes Donald Trump? Why, yes. President describes Donald Trump or compliments Donald Trump. And so that is an objective complement. The word objective means a complement of the object. And the direct object here is Donald Trump. And president is a complement. And then the second thing it talks about is linking verb, the review of linking verbs. And we have gone over linking verbs. We've used them this year. You've even memorized them for a quiz. But linking verbs will have these complements, either a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. A predicate nominative is a noun or a pronoun that follows a linking verb and renames or explains the subject. The noun or pronoun means the same thing or the person as the object, as the subject. Let me just give you an example. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. You have to have a linking verb like am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. All of those are linking verbs. And if I say Mrs. Vance is the principal, you've got a subject, Mrs. Vance, is the verb, and it's a linking verb. And then you have the principal. Principal renames Mrs. Vance, which means that is a predicate nominative. Predicate because it's in the predicate, the verb part of the sentence, and it's a nominative because it renames. A predicate adjective is an adjective that follows a linking verb and modifies the subject. And you can see that on page 230. In your exercise, you are asked to draw one line under all action verbs. That ought to be easy to do, to find those action verbs. Above each object, write DO for direct object. Above each indirect object, write IO. Above each objective complement, write OC. Draw two lines under each linking verb. Above each predicate nominative, write PN, and above each predicate adjective, write PA. You've got 14 of them to do there. Let's look at, a couple of them and see if we can figure them out. Number one, Igor Sikorsky designed and flew the first four-engine airplane. Well, first thing we have to do is look for verbs. We want to underline all action verbs. We want to double line all linking verbs. The verbs we have in sentence number one is designed and flew. Those are the only verbs, and those are both action verbs, and so we're going to underline them once. And since they're action verbs and we're looking for the complements of these action verbs, we're looking for direct objects, indirect objects, or objective complements. Sikorsky designed and Sikorsky flew what? You ask the question. Well, he actually flew an airplane. So that is a direct object. You would put DO over direct object. The fact that you have the first four-engine, those are just descriptive words. Those are just adjectives talking about the airplane, and so they are not a part of the direct object. Let's look at number three. By General Grant's order, Little Phil Sheridan became the cavalry leader of the Army of the Potomac in 1864. So we're looking for verbs. Any action verbs in here? Order, let's see. By General Grant, Little Phil Sheridan became is a verb, but it's not an action verb. So became is a linking verb. And so we're going to want to underline that twice. Well, when we read that sentence, Little Phil Sheridan became what? Well, he became the leader. That is a predicate nominative. Anytime that you have a linking verb and you can read it and answer the question who or what, you have a predicate nominative. Let's do one more. Number 4. Mr. Scrooge in Dickens' Christmas Carol is miserly, bitter, and lonely. Verbs. Well, Mr. Scrooge is a subject, and in Dickens' Christmas Carol is a prepositional phrase, and so we can eliminate it altogether. And so you have is your verb, and that is a linking verb. It's not an action verb at all, state of being. Mr. Scrooge is what? Well, it says he's miserly, it says he's bitter, and it says he's lonely. These aren't predicate nominatives, because predicate nominatives are made up of nouns. What we have here are adjectives, predicate adjectives. Miserly describes Scrooge, bitter describes Scrooge, lonely describes Scrooge. So you would underline is twice, and then you would label over top of miserly, bitter, and lonely PA, the initials PA. If you have any questions, put them here. I'll check them out. Thanks. God bless.